What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Monday, everybody. So, today I am doing a video. It's a follow-up from my Anomicon presentation that was really well received by pretty much everybody who saw it. It's about some of these summits and meetings and conferences that were taking place in the 80s between scientists who study phenomenology. All of the major names that you can imagine were part of this. Dr. Jacques Valleé, John Keel, Andrija Puharich, Jacobo Grinberg, Salvador Freixedo, Jose Juan Benitez. And just a note on Benitez, I know how anti-Semitic he's been throughout his entire life. So I know I don't agree with any of his views against the Jewish people. I do not agree. But he's been one of the prominent figures within the topic from Spain. So whenever I see an important actor talking about this stuff, I have to report on it. I can't avoid it just because of a political bias or an ideology that I do not agree with. Sorry if you get angry because of this. I am sorry. I do not align with Benitez's views at all, but I do think he's done a lot of work within the topic. So it needs to be investigated. He was part of these conferences. Now that I got that out of the way, I have a viewer who's a friend of the show, Javier Marcote, who's from Spain. He's been giving me a lot of information of old newspapers from that era that documented all of these conferences. And the most recent email that I got from him is very, very interesting. So I'm going to read one of these articles to you. It is from the Tribuna da Imprensa, which is, I believe, a Portuguese newspaper, from October 22nd, 1985. It's a presentation by Dr. Jacobo Grinberg and Salvador Freixedo. It is written by journalist Isidro Sanchez. This is the article. It says, at the Congress on the Great Mysteries of Man, held in San Jose, Costa Rica, Mexican neurophysiologist Jacobo Grinberg, director of the Mexican Institute of the Study of Consciousness, presented a very bold thesis. Matter does not exist by itself, but is the elaboration of our consciousness. So it is a mistake to call certain unusual phenomena paranormal, since there is no defined normality. There are different levels of normalities or realities that are interconnected through different mechanisms through which humans can transit. In general, he explained, we do not move another extract of reality until we have exhausted the knowledge of the previous one. But there are cases of jumps, quote unquote, which are paranormal phenomena more similar to those recorded by sensitive ones. By showing a series of graphs created with electronic equipment, Greenberg emphasized that at a fundamental level, we ourselves create and are responsible for the events and the experiences that exist at each level of reality. According to Greenberg, it takes a human 50 milliseconds to form a visual image, and if another being takes 60 seconds to perform the same process, their world will be different. If there were a being whose speed was 1 hour, they would see us as something simultaneous, instantaneous, like a photograph. On the other hand, if an ant had a shorter period, its reality will be more elemental. So if we gave it a sugar cube in our present for it, this would be happening in a distant future. However, in some cases, a human can modify their perception of time. For example, going to 100 milliseconds, which would put them in simultaneity with the future, explaining cases of prophecy. The electromagnetic field of our neurons, he said, modifies the energy structure and the amount of space-time, and this interaction is a reality. Physical objects are the surface of our brain. We live inside our own brain. We see the walls of our brain. We do not know what is outside of us because we can only physically confirm the electromagnetic changes we register. Not only is man capable of generating and modifying his own reality, but he can also influence the brain of another man by whom he communicates. With an explanation that was a true mystery for most of those present, Greenberg deduced that matter does not exist. What we call objects are our own creations. What exists are levels of ourselves, of our consciousness. This was the case with the Mexican healer Pachita, who operated with a kitchen knife in a room in her house, performing wonderful organ transplants, even cerebral matter, without rejection. What happened was that there was a consciousness without blockages, which could provoke what she thought. Pachita created and transformed reality, even that of those who were close. The scientists affirmed, having witnessed several operations himself. Why can't we all do this? Because we are bound, trapped in a level of reality. We only see a part of it because we have been subjected to learning. That's why children see more than adults. Adults, he pointed out, would mean being able to change the focus of reality at will, removing the blinders, the structures, and the programs that condition us. Man himself, he concluded, is the greatest mystery that can see levels of reality. Outside of us, we do not know what exists. And according to the evidence we have in the lab, outside of us, there is no time or space. There is nothing. Finally, Greenberg asserted that the brain is an instrument, but not man's consciousness. This consciousness, we do not know what it is or where it is, but it depends on the quality of matter and its quality of physical reality. This is one of the most interesting pieces of information that I've read about Greenberg. He writes a lot about this in his books, but translating a lot of his books is really a major challenge. It is something that I will get myself to doing in the future, but for now, this is the closest we can get to it. So I was watching yesterday a new show in Mexico from Fepo, who is a famous Mexican YouTuber who deals with the paranormal. His podcast actually is called Paranormal Podcast. It's in Spanish. He's from Yucatan, all the way on the other side of Mexico. I'm in Tijuana. And he made a recent program called Paranormal Tables, which is a debate table about a specific topic with specialists in the field. The second one I believe he had was about telepathy and the power of the mind. And they spoke about Greenberg. There is a parapsychologist called Ramses de Leon, who I just contacted, and he agreed to do an interview with me. He's one of the main voices right now in Mexico on parapsychology, but he takes the scientific approach. So he's studying the highest levels of this topic. And he's one of the Mexicans who's at the highest levels right now on this topic. So, and when I heard him speak, a lot of what I've been reporting here and talking about here rang true to me, because he talks about Jacobo when he always tried to describe what consciousness is. He could never really pin it down. He could never really say consciousness is this. In fact, consciousness has been one of the most elusive topics to define forever. What Jacobo has been trying to focus on before he disappeared was the experience of reality, not consciousness itself. When he did his transfer potential experiment, his main thesis was that consciousness is non-local. We don't know where it comes from. We know that it exists. We know that it interacts with our brains and with our beings, but we have no idea where it comes from. So what he can only try and explain and replicate is the experience of reality. So that's what Jacobo excels at. And I think that this explanation is very much in line with what I'm telling you guys about. I have a previous episode also where Ida Cuellar talks to me and talks to Dr. Alex Gomez Marin, who I will have both of them on the channel this week. So I'm so excited for that. I'm not going to tell you exactly when, but you can expect both of them to be on the channel. Ida Cuellar talked about Pachita, how people who interacted with her described reality as she was in the room.
What's imagination, right? Because imagination is like a substance. It's not just something that is nothing, because you cannot touch, the imagination. It's not physical, but either way, it's like a substance. It's something that you can connect with. And for instance, Jacobo Grinberg, that scientist that I was doing the documentary, he's talking about consciousness and imagination. And in some moment, it seems like imagination and consciousness is like the same thing. So he was saying that the reality itself, it has a substance, and this substance was consciousness. So that's why we can change reality, because through our consciousness, it was this famous shaman woman, Pachita, la curandera, that he was like opening with his knife the bodies of the people, and he was like taking things like illness, and he was like saving people from terrible illness. But the most interesting thing is when people was with Pachita, all the people that I interview and all the books that I read, Jodorowsky, Jacobo Grinberg, Salvador Fresedo, they were assistants of her. And then I interview a lot of people, assistants of Pachita, and people that was being surgered by her. What was a thing that all the people was telling to me was like, when you went with Pachita, the reality was more liquid, was not as solid as, as now you can touch, was more liquid. So even the assistant of her was saying to me, like, I think that he could open the bodies of the people just by the hand. The instrument of knife was just an instrument, but he could open people by the knife. And then he was like with her hand, was like just putting the hand on the bone, and it was like just closing, and a little scare was like little scare was there. So if you think that the world that in which we are is like kind of imagination, it's the substance of this world, then everything changed, right? We are part of a huge world made by this consciousness. So I think that if you put imagination in that term, not just the ideas that come to you, but just like understanding that the whole universe is made by this substance in a way, then the perspective of everything is like, okay, I'm like in a dream, no? As Calderón de la Barca, as all the writers and mystics are saying to us, like, this is like kind of a dream. You cannot separate the difference in between when you are awake or you are dreaming. Just, if you have a lucid dream and it's like, okay, I'm dreaming, but you can feel everything as if it was real. So I think imagination is this frontier, this boundary in between these two worlds.
He claimed that Pachita made people feel like reality was kind of liquid, like malleable, like it could change at any moment. Like you would go inside a bubble and it would just feel different. That, I believe, is what Jacobo is talking about. He believes that our own brains are some sort of machine that hasn't been understood fully, that we are capable of doing things that will help us create our own environment, our own reality. And I think that people that are at the highest level of any discipline do this, but I don't think many of them understand what they're doing and how they are creating their reality. And it doesn't have to do just with the mere concept of magic, remote viewing, and telekinesis and all that stuff, which many claim that it's real and that it's true. I happen to have experienced two of those things, which is environment manipulation and telepathy. And I will not accept anyone who tells me it's not true, because I've experienced it and I believe it's true. I know it is. So, what I think the power that we have is, it's a whole process, right? We begin with a single thought of something that we want to do. And then we start developing that thought. It goes into maybe writing, maybe some physical actions that will eventually lead us to that outcome. But it doesn't have to do with just, bang, I want it and it just appeared right in front of me. I did experience something like that when I talk about environment manipulation, but I think that I've experienced it only because I was under the effect of psychedelics, which is a whole other topic that also has to do with this, but we will need a specific episode about that. The powers of psychedelics are very interesting to explore. But what I am talking about is, without psychedelics, it's a whole process that it takes time. It's just like the scientific method. You begin with the thought, and then you follow that thought with some action that will eventually lead you to that specific outcome. That is how we create our own reality. And there is a certain power of influence that some of us do understand better than others, but we all have it. And the creeds are very important here. But I think that there need to be the creeds within ourselves and the creeds to the outside world. Sometimes you can combine them, but it is more advisable to just say them to yourself so you can keep on going in the same way to achieve your goal. Again, it is not like magic. It is the creation of experience through our own means and our own understanding and our own power of action. It's not belief, it is action, you know? But yeah, belief is also involved, very much so. So I think it's very interesting to see that these conferences where Greenberg was involved were actually a celebration of 100 years of these types of conferences into phenomenology. And within the Five Eyes community that talk about these subjects, a lot of them say that phenomenology didn't really start being studied seriously until like the 1930s. And according to these conferences, they were already celebrating 100 years of them, which means that in the 1880s, these conferences were already being celebrated between scientists from that era. There seems to be a disconnect here. Why are people within the scientific community who study phenomenology, parapsychology, and all this stuff saying that we didn't start studying these seriously until the late 30s, 1930s, when in fact it was happening 50 years earlier? Man, now I want to ask Dr. Jacques Valleé, Dr. Hal Puthoff, all of these people, even more so about these conferences, because I am pretty sure they know what they were about and the history of them. So I would love to know about them. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on what you think about this presentation from Greenberg and what you think about the brain being an instrument, a tool for humans to shape their own reality. How far do you think this ability goes? And how magical could it be? I don't think it's really that apparent, the magic, but I do think it exists. Although I think there's like a very due to the all the science fiction novels and movies that have been created for a long time, we have a very twisted definition of what magic is. So I think that needs to be redefined also, because I always go back to one of my favorite Marvel movies, which is Avengers, where Thor, who comes from the Norse mythology, from the Norse gods, tells the Natalie Portman character that magic in his realm is science, but on Earth they consider it magic, but it's just another form of science. I wonder if that is the same case in the real world, and we just need to start looking at many of these things as science. According to Ramses de Leon and many more parapsychologists within the field, Dr. Jeffrey Mishlove and others, Ed May, all of these topics can be studied scientifically. And they have been studied scientifically for a long time. The problem is there hasn't been much funding going into them, at least not publicly. So, what do you think about that? Let me know in the comments. I'm very excited for these emails that I received from Javier Marcote. There are a couple more that I'm going to share with you eventually. One from Andrija Puharich, one from Salvador Freixedo, and a small quote from Dr. Jacques Valleé that is very, very interesting. It's like a look through history with a very specific lens, that I think it's very important and very interesting. So thank you, Javier, for your contribution to this channel. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you can get notified when a new video drops. If you want to support the channel in any other way, I'm going to ask you to go to the description. There are going to be a few links there with options so you can take your pick. Any help will be always appreciated. And I want to let you guys know that over the next couple of weeks, there are going to come out a lot of more short videos and social media content in many more platforms. We're setting that up right now. We're setting up Snapchat. We're setting up TikTok. We're setting up Instagram on a more regular basis. Facebook too. So be on the lookout for that. And if you want to check out the KGRA feed, I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can check it out too. We're like 7 episodes in, and the response has been very, very good. So thank you for that too. Until the next video. Bye.